The Roman war machine had never lost momentum. Province after province fell. Enemies either surrendered or vanished. But then something unthinkable happened. Not in Rome, not in a distant land, but in the untamed, unforgiving forests of Gaul, where one man, unknown, underestimated, a warlord born of a cursed legacy, did what no one thought possible. He made Caesar bleed. He made Rome doubt. And then he vanished into the pages of a story few ever finish. Today on Long History Short, we peel back the layers of a rivalry that shook an empire. Julius Caesar versus Vercingetorix. What really happened when the world's greatest general met the defiant warlord no one expected? Let's find out. By the mid-1st century BCE, the Roman Republic was a beast with an insatiable appetite, growing bolder, richer, and more ruthless by the year. At its untamed edge lay a land Rome had coveted for decades: Gaul. It wasn't a single kingdom, but a sprawling patchwork of fierce, proud tribes. Imagine modern-day France, Belgium, parts of Switzerland, even Germany. A wild, challenging place of thick forests, winding rivers, and peoples who worshipped gods the Romans couldn't comprehend. To Rome, Gaul was a collection of barbarians. To the Gauls, Rome was invasive, arrogant, and a relentless tide of iron. But while Gaul's warriors were undeniably brave, they were fatally divided, more likely to fight each other than to stand as one. And Julius Caesar saw his opening. This wasn't just a general. Caesar was a predator, ambitious, calculating, and desperate for glory. He wasn't conquering Gaul simply for Rome. He was carving an empire for himself. Military success meant ultimate political power, and power was the only path forward. By 58 BCE, Caesar had unleashed his legions across Gaul. His stated goal, pacification. But pacify is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, because Caesar's campaign wasn't about peace. It was about absolute dominance. And at first, it worked with terrifying efficiency. Tribe after tribe shattered, some surrendered, some resisted, and were simply annihilated. In just a few brutal years, Caesar carved a blood-soaked trail across Gaul, claiming victory after victory. The Roman eagle soared unchallenged, but history wasn't done with Gaul yet, because far from the legion's march, in the untamed highlands of central Gaul, a young noble watched this crushing tide unfold. His name was Vercingetorix. Born into the Arverni elite around 82 BCE, Vercingetorix had war in his blood. His father had once dared to dream of a united Gaul, and for that ambition, he had been executed. That legacy hung over Vercingetorix like a dark, motivating shadow. And when he too spoke of resisting Rome, even his own tribe cast him out. But exile didn't break him, it forged him, because when Vercingetorix returned, he came back not as a mere warrior, but as a unifier. One by one, the fractured tribes who had stood alone began to listen. Because this young chief didn't just want to fight Caesar, he wanted to outsmart him. And in 52 BCE, the fire was lit. The Roman eagle had flown unchecked for years. But now, in the thick forests and fog-draped valleys of Gaul, a new defiant banner was rising, and the war to stop Caesar was just beginning. It started not with an army's roar, but a whisper that ignited a continent. In 52 BCE, Vercingetorix sent word across Gaul. Rome must be resisted, and somehow, against centuries of ingrained blood feuds and tribal rivalries, Gaul listened. Dozens of tribes rallied behind him, not because he was the strongest warrior, but because he was the first to offer something Gaul had never truly possessed: unity. Suddenly, Caesar wasn't facing scattered, isolated resistance. He was facing a movement, a coordinated burning uprising. And Vercingetorix. He wasn't just leading a rebellion, he was orchestrating a meticulously planned campaign. His strategy was brutal, but utterly brilliant. If Rome lived off the land, then Gaul would burn the land to ash. Grain stores? Systematically destroyed. Bridges cut to splinters. Entire towns abandoned, then torched, leaving nothing but smoke and ruin. Even his own allies were shocked by the scorched earth policy. Burn your own homeland? They protested. But Vercingetorix understood something few others did. To fight a relentless machine like Rome, you had to leave it nothing to feed on, and it worked. Caesar's legions, accustomed to moving fast and living off captured supplies, began to falter. Supply lines stretched thin. Food ran desperately low. Morale dipped precariously. Rome's greatest strength, its unstoppable momentum, was breaking down, choked by a starving land. Then came Gergovia, a city perched high on a plateau, fortified by nature, defensible by design, and chosen perfectly by Vercingetorix as his stronghold. Caesar, desperate to crush the burgeoning rebellion before it consumed Gaul, made a rare and catastrophic mistake. He attacked uphill, without proper support, directly into a cunningly laid trap. The result? Roman legions, the invincible, disciplined war machine, were forced into a chaotic, bloody retreat. Hundreds lay dead. It was a rare and stinging defeat for the man who was supposed to be unstoppable. For the first time, Caesar looked vulnerable. And Gaul, watching from the forests and mountains, saw a blazing flicker of hope. But victory breeds risk, and Vercingetorix knew something else too. Hope can make you overreach. The rebellion was working, but it wasn't over, so he retreated to regroup, choosing another fortress high on a hill, strategically defensible, and Caesar shadowed him relentlessly. The hunt was on. It was never supposed to end like this, not in retreat, not trapped behind walls, but after Gergovia, the tides were shifting. Rome was regrouping with cold, calculating fury. The rebellion was spreading fast. Vercingetorix risked losing vital control. So he made a monumental choice: pull back, fortify, force Caesar to come to him on his terms. He chose Alesia, a colossal hilltop stronghold, naturally ringed by winding rivers, sheer cliffs, and open plains. A fortress built into the landscape itself. One way in, no easy way out. From the top, the Gauls could see for miles, an unassailable bastion. But Caesar didn't try to storm it. He did something that defied all convention, something no one expected, something almost mad. He built a wall. Then another. A wall to trap the enemy in, an inner ring of iron, and another, facing outward, to keep reinforcements out. 10 miles around Alesia, an intricate nightmare of trenches, towering palisades, wooden watchtowers, hidden spike pits. Then 14 miles more, facing outward, every side, every angle, covered. It was a double ring of death, a Roman bear trap, with the jaws slowly, inexorably closing. Inside Alesia, 80,000 Gauls staring starvation in the face. Outside, a massive Gallic relief army, possibly as large as 250,000 warriors, racing desperately to break the siege. And in between, Caesar and his 50,000 battle-hardened men, trapped between two impossible forces, boxed in on both sides. It was no longer a siege. It was a brutal, ticking countdown. The relief army struck like a hurricane, wave after furious wave, hammering the outer Roman wall. From inside Alesia, Vercingetorix launched desperate sorties, striking the inner wall. Arrows rained like hail. Towers burned, painting the night sky. Urgent signals flared from both sides, desperate pleas and commands. At one critical point, the outer wall nearly broke, the Gallic horde surging through. Caesar, in full armor, with a grim determination, personally rushed to the breach with his last reserves, fighting in the dirt alongside his beleaguered men. Roman discipline, forged in countless wars, held by a thread. And then, silence. The relief army, utterly exhausted and bleeding from 1,000 wounds, finally fell back, broken. Inside Alesia, watching the distant fading fires, Vercingetorix knew what it meant. No one was coming. The last hope had vanished. He gathered his armor, polished his weapons one final time, mounted his horse, and in one of the most iconic, gut-wrenching moments in ancient warfare, Vercingetorix rode out of Alesia, through the Roman lines, and surrendered. He didn't beg. He didn't speak a single word. He simply dismounted and laid his weapons at Caesar's feet. No war cry, no final defiance, just silence. The rebellion was over. Gaul was Rome's. Rome called it a triumph, but for Vercingetorix, it was the beginning of the end. After his surrender at Alesia, he was shackled, chained, and marched out of Gaul, not as a king, but as a living trophy. He spent the next 6 years in a Roman prison, a dank cell beneath the city, beneath history itself. No trial, no mercy, just cold stone walls, iron bars, and the torturous weight of waiting. And when Caesar finally returned victorious from his campaigns, he planned a celebration unlike any Rome had ever seen. It was called a triumph, a ceremonial procession reserved for Rome's greatest conquerors. Trumpets blared, a deafening fanfare. Banners emblazoned with the eagle of Rome waved proudly. Untold treasure, plundered from across Gaul, was paraded through the adoring streets. Behind it all, Julius Caesar himself, in a chariot of solid gold, hailed as a god, the triumphant savior of Rome. And walking behind him, Vercingetorix, in chains, head down, surrounded by impassive guards. The people roared for Caesar, a deafening tide of adulation. But many, in the vast Roman crowd, watched the defeated king in solemn silence. Because they all knew the end of the parade was the end of the prisoner. In the final chilling moment of Caesar's triumph, Vercingetorix was led away to the Tullianum, Rome's most feared, ancient prison. There, in the crushing darkness, he was quietly, brutally strangled. No audience, no funeral. Just a swift, calculated end to the man who had nearly turned the tide against the mighty Republic. But here's the profound irony. Despite everything, Caesar himself never spoke ill of him. In Commentari de Bello Gallico, his personal account of the war, Caesar didn't dismiss him as a savage. He lauded him. He called him a strategist, a unifier, a truly worthy foe. Even in death, Vercingetorix earned something most enemies of Rome never received: respect. And in doing so, he became more than a defeated rebel. He became a symbol. The war ended, but the story didn't. Because what happened between Julius Caesar, Vercingetorix, didn't just settle the fate of Gaul, it fundamentally changed the course of Western history forever. In life, Vercingetorix lost the brutal battle, but in death, he became something far more powerful, a myth. In France, centuries after Rome itself had crumbled into dust, he rose again as a national hero. During the 19th century, as nascent French identity sought its deep historical roots, Vercingetorix was fiercely reclaimed as a founding symbol, the first man to truly unify France, to fight for her independence, to defiantly stand against an overwhelming empire. Napoleon himself, centuries later, ordered his statue to be raised at Alesia, what many believe to be the exact site of Alesia. The inscription below reads, "Gaul united, forming a single nation, animated by the same spirit, can defy the universe. The man who lost became the enduring face of pride. As for Caesar, he returned from Gaul with unmatched glory, immense riches, unprecedented power, but victory came with ambition, and ambition, in the viper's nest of Roman politics, came with ruthless enemies. Within a decade, Caesar himself would be brutally stabbed to death by senators who feared what his unchecked power had become. The very republic he fought so tirelessly to strengthen and expand, ironically, collapsed into an empire ruled by emperors, ushered in by his own actions. In conquering Gaul, Caesar built the platform for Rome's golden age, but he also lit the fuse that definitively ended the republic. Vercingetorix and Caesar, one fought to unite a fractured land under one banner of resistance, the other to relentlessly expand a restless, ambitious empire. Their direct rivalry was fleeting, ending in the dust of Alesia. Their legacies, however, are massive and entwined. They were never equals on the battlefield, but in the grand tapestry of human memory, they share the same breath, forever linked by the conflict that defined them both. In the epic clash of Rome and Gaul, conquest may have won the day, but resistance was never, ever forgotten. This has been Long History Short, where we don't just tell the story, we show why it still matters. If you found this rivalry as fascinating as we did, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us, what should we uncover next?